Hi, Michael. Excited
Hello.
to have you. Excited to have you as part
Thanks.
of.
I was
Yes,
going to say thanks for having me. I mean, this is really these are conversations I enjoy, and as you and I have done many times, I love talking about broader issues in the industry, not just what we do in our everyday lives.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. And we've known each other for years and years and have had a lot of these conversations. And I know others in the industry will benefit from your experience. So thank you for being an ally and thank you for joining Thrive and our Day of Impact. We're really pumped to have you and excited about the Day of Impact in early June. So
Oh,
let me start.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let me start by talking about allies because allies are critical in our careers. Whether you're a man or a woman, whether you have an ally that is a man or a woman, allyship is and sponsorship and mentorship are all topics that are very important in our industry. And tell me what your thoughts are in general on allyship.
I think it's probably the most important piece of my advancement in my life. And if people were asking me who were my allies, I can point to three through my career that took an active interest in my development and in continuing to grow me. And they have become, and I sometimes think it's interesting because I love the words that you're using around ally. These are people that are in your camp and you know they're there for you. And I think sometimes our wording isn't quite clear in our industry and how we define it. We all have different definitions, and you go down the road of mentorship and what that looks like. Well, those are all different words. And your mentors may be your ally, but I love the word of ally because it means you know somebody is there for you. What I think is really important, I've said this to people, that you're going to have people that come in your life and they will be your ally. It's important for you to recognize it and sometimes to understand that you may not feel like they're your ally because they're literally your truth teller. And the people that are truth tellers in your life will be the people that are truly an ally to you because they are not telling you what you want to hear. They're telling you what they think you need to hear. And that's hard for a lot of people that don't have the emotional maturity to understand. I need to listen to it. It doesn't mean I have to agree with it, but I have to be mature enough to be able to listen to what advice has been given to me, because sometimes it's the painful truth of our blind spots that we can't see that continue to develop us. And I have found the allies in my life have been that forthcoming to be able to help me identify my blind spot. And it's important because if they're an ally, their intentions are coming from a really good place. And to me, that's what you have to understand. If you think somebody is really your ally, don't ever get upset with anything they're telling you, because they're telling you for a reason. And you know the intent is not malicious. The intent is literally coming from a place about you and your growth.
I love that. And having those difficult conversations and giving feedback is such an important thing and receiving that. So I think that's great feedback and advice. So switching to allyship and mentorship, and let's talk about mentorship
Yeah.
specifically. A lot of times when women are early in their career, they are looking for mentors or allies and they don't know how to go about getting one. So what's your advice to all of the women that are part of Thrive to go and get a male sponsor or a male ally?
Yeah, it's really funny. I've said this often, and at my time in my previous life, specifically at MGM, everybody knew anybody could get on my calendar, and the meeting was all about them. And I remember when I first got there, I had an assistant that said, so and so is trying to get on your calendar, so and so, and I said, just put them on. And they said, well, don't you want to know what it's regarding? I said, it's regarding them wanting my time. Just get them on my calendar. And the reason I say that is I had an organization with a very large sales audience. I probably had a core of about 20 people that fully took advantage of that. And those 20 people would meet with me. We would talk about their life. And when you want to approach somebody being your mentor, it's as simple as asking. And one of the things that I have mentioned to people, though, is please define what you think that looks like. So when I would have those conversations and somebody would say, I want you to mentor me, I said, please define what you think that looks like so that I understand what the expectations are. And that's where the word mentor sometimes has a broad variety of meanings, depending on what filter you're looking at or looking through. And it may look different to me, it may look different to you. So I think it's important to clarify those expectations. But to ask people, I want your time. And I think it's most important, if you're really going to have somebody mentor you, you're asking them to be your truth teller. And you will hear me say that often. And I am saying that even in my current role with some very senior executives in our company, to say everybody needs to find your truth teller. And if you're really going to have a mentor, it needs to be that. And you need to be able to learn from those people and come with something. When you have mentors, you're going to have meetings and you're going to meet with those people and you're going to have discussions. What are those discussions going to look like? What are you trying to get out of those discussions? There should be a purpose to the discussion. And I don't mean a full agenda, but you may come to a mentor and say, I really want to talk to you about emotional intelligence because that's what I want to grow today. And that's the discussion I want to have. Or I want to come and talk to you about difficult conversations. How do you have them? What does it look like? Have a purpose to those conversations if you're going to get the most out of it. But I've learned through, I don't care if it's volunteerism, Melissa, I don't care if it's mentorship. It's as easy as asking, because most people want to help others. And I think in this environment today, we have muddied so many conversations. Let's say I want to mentor a young female in our industry. I may have trouble approaching that without them approaching me to say, I would really welcome your input and your conversation. I think it's as simple as that. And it is uncomfortable. I remember the first couple of people that came to meet with me, and they were younger executives in our organization. They told me I was so nervous coming in here, and now I'm not, because we just had a conversation. And I think sometimes people get stuck with titles. They shouldn't. If you're a young executive, you should not be worried about titles. People that really want to help people will want to help people. And if they don't, you know what you're dealing with. And candidly, if somebody tells you no at that level, they're not the person you want mentoring you anyway. They're
Exactly.
not. But there may
Exactly.
be, and I think it's important to know, you may have somebody you ask to mentor you that may not have the time once you've defined the expectation. But those people are usually really good about saying, I can't do that and commit it, but I have somebody that could. And here's who I would recommend that you go to. So either way, it's going to open up a path. There is no reason not to ask the question.
Right. I love that. My piece of advice to women is ask for what you want, because, don't be afraid to do that. The other piece of advice that I always give on mentorship is, when you're asking, also make sure that you're offering something back. A reciprocal mentorship is always, to me, very, very important.
I completely agree with that. And you said something that's really important, Melissa. It's not only in my life, but not just in my professional life, but in my personal life. I had 3 girls in my household, and I used to have to remind them, please don't assume I know where you're starting the conversation from. What has been going on in your head and the conversation of where you think I already know. Start the conversation, and you just said, start the conversation with, let me tell you everything I'm thinking. And I think that is the best way to approach those conversations, because then the expectations get level set.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, let's talk to the men that are listening.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to men to support women, and how can they do a more impactful job of supporting women that are in their careers in their life?
I think it's really important for men specifically to understand that listening is probably the most critical key. What I have learned in my development, and I think I have developed a lot of emotional intelligence. I used to have women employees that would come to me, and they would talk to me about something that was very emotional. And after I listened, I would say, did you want me to fix it, or did you want me to listen? And I think that is hard for many men to understand. Sometimes people are just sharing, and they need an outlet. They may want some advice, but they're not asking you to do anything with it. Don't assume that a conversation is so that you can fix something. Sometimes the conversation is to help somebody think through something. And I think men specifically don't do a good enough job. a lot of men are wired in the way of they just want to fix things instead of saying, no, my job is to help people understand how should they be looking at a problem? How should they think about it? What other resources should they be looking at? Does not mean I'm the one actually fixing it. It's just great advice. And, and I couldn't be more proud that, I have a chief sales officer that reaches out to me just in the middle of the day and she's sending me a note and goes, I need a gut check. That's my job, is just to say, is she on the right path? And that's what she's asking me. This is how I'm looking at this problem. What do you think? Am I going down the right path? And I think that's the important one. And, more than anything, when you talk about support and development, also understand that everybody needs something different. And what I've learned in my journey is I treat everybody the same, but I approach everybody differently, because I have certain members of my team, and my team is 90% female. I have many members of my team that need that a boy and that a girl. You're doing a really great job much more often than other members of my team. I have other members of my team that I have to challenge them intellectually. They want to grow. They want to learn. That's what's going to move them. I have others that need to know every day they're doing a really good job and they're doing the right things. I think it's important with somebody that you're going to be mentoring, you're going to be helping, you're going to be sponsoring, whatever that is. You need to make sure you understand what that person needs from you, because it may need a daily check-in. It may need a daily, how was your day? And there's a great adage that I remember, and it came from Anson Dorrance, who coached at North Carolina University. But the one thing I've taken away and I've developed, and I've understood this, is people do not know how much, or do not care how much you know. They want to know how much do you care about them. And I think that is extremely important with female leaders that we are leading. They want to know I care about them, not about my knowledge, my experience, and what I can do in their career. It really is about that, because if you can develop that trust, the rest of it is easy, because then you can really help somebody grow. But I think that's important for men to understand that. Sometimes just shut up and listen.
I love that. And I think listening is the most important trait for anyone, man or woman.
I would
Let's get
agree.
back to the beginning of your career. Just a couple quick last questions. Who was your biggest ally in the beginning of your career?
The guy who gave me my first my first management job. And I can tell you currently he is the general manager of the Hyatt Regency Chicago. He moved me, took an active interest in my career. I started at Hyatt Hotels bussing tables, and he gave me my first supervisor role in a restaurant, gave me my first management job in a restaurant, moved me to Austin, Texas. And the reason he moved me, and this is what I mean by a true ally, he said, you need to get out of here. Everybody's watched you grow up, and no matter what, you're always going to be the kid to him. And he moved me to another hotel, understanding I needed to come into a place that nobody saw me as the 15-year-old bussing tables in that audience. And then he moved me a third time to Palm Springs, California. And it was interesting because when I moved to Palm Springs, I'll never forget it. He met me. He met me as soon as I landed. We went to the bar, had a beer. It's late in the evening, and he said, "I've moved you 3 times. The rest of it's on you. Like, I've got you going. Now it's up to you and what you do with it." And that was the ally. And when I talk about a truth teller, I'll never forget it, Melissa. My very first, he put me in this management job. I'm having my first performance review, and he's sitting there saying, "You're brilliant." And I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. And then all of a sudden, and he goes, "And you use this much of your brain." And the rest of the performance review was telling me, you're not a kid. You have ideas, you have thoughts, you need to bring them. And until you do, you're never going to be the person you want to be. And I needed that. And believe me, it wasn't pleasant to have your first performance review that wasn't good when it was all said and done. But he's trying to tell you, this is your potential and this is where you are. And I'm trying to get you here. I think that's the important part. And he has been somebody I've kept in contact with. I make sure to see often when I'm in Chicago. But you know what it is? Always, thank you. I'm always thanking him for what he did and how he started. And he couldn't be more proud. I mean, he is one of those people that you could tell he's like the proud father And I tease him. His son is named Michael. I always tell him he named his kid after me. So that's part of it.
That's great. That's a great story. And the truth telling, it clearly comes through loud and clear. Well, Michael, thank you so much for your feedback, for your support of women in leadership and allyship and mentorship. We know you play a big part in the industry, and really thank you for joining us today, and really look forward to the Day of Impact. And I know you are joining, as well as several key executives in the travel industry. And the Days of Impact are June 8th, 9th, and 10th. I also wanted to remind people that the Thrive Match program is now live. This is a great opportunity where people can meet allies, they can meet fellow advocates, they can meet women in travel to really network and grow their network. And there's nothing more important in a time where we're just in a virtual world, starting to get out of the virtual world, to make sure that we have allies and to make sure that we network. So thank you for joining us today.